Let me tell you the story of a dog, a wolf, his shiv, and a game whose meta was flipped entirely on its head when one patch went horribly wrong. Teamfight Tactics is a strategy auto battler released by Riot Games, and in the few years since its release, it has had a handful of compositions that have been particularly over-centralizing.
Oh, is it gonna go here? No, it has to go this way. What? That's so broken.
This story actually starts with the dog, Riot Mortdog. Back in early 2023, Riot Mortdog asked the community what they believe to be the most broken composition of all time.
This is going to be an easy one.
In fact, he ran a bracket to determine it, and when the dust had settled, a winner had been decided. The winner was Divine Hunter Warwick, aka Warweek.
There will be no hotfix, so we are calling this Warwick.
It was just absolute bat insanity.
So what was Warweek? How broken was it, and how exactly did it happen? Well, let's find out. October 14th, 2020. The world is in lockdown to the COVID pandemic, and the game that put the S in Riot Games is soaring in popularity. It's patch day, which means that everyone is logging on, playing solo queue, and trying to explore brand new compositions to help them climb. But very quickly, everyone notices something odd. Every lobby is being won by the same unit, Divine Hunter Warwick. And the only through line, it's Warwick with a static shiv, an item not normally seen on a late game carry. The day before, patch notes were released that outlined two major changes in the game. The first was to the Divine trait. Before the patch, Divine gave its unit a small amount of damage reduction and true damage that could last the entirety of the fight. But in patch 10.21, this was reworked to give these units much more damage reduction and true damage for a shorter length of time. Enough time to wipe out enemies before they could fight back. The next part of the issue came in the form of a buff to an item called Static Shiv. Static Shiv up to this point in time was an item that was very strong in the early parts of the game, but fell off the further into the game you went. Every 3 attacks, the unit holding it sends out a bolt of lightning that can hit up to 4 units depending on different factors. It also does bonus damage to units who are crowd controlled or shielded. However, it seemed to not be performing too well in the data, as Riot decided it needed a significant buff. And I mean a significant buff. In this patch, the bonus damage that Static Shiv had was increased from 85 to 175.
You can see Warwick's damage here, right? The Shiv procs count for more than half of his damage, and that it's partially, I guess, Divine as well. But for the most part, Shiv killed the entire board because it was just 175 true damage every third auto. You have a ton of attack speed, you're casting really quickly, and you just kind of go crazy.
Now, it's not just that the numbers got bigger and so it became broken. What made Warweek happen was the unique interaction between Warwick and the item. You see, Warwick's ability gave him additional attack speed, which is great for an item like Static Shiv. But he also was able to crowd control all of the units around him whenever he scored a kill or assist.
Holy
And alongside Jax, Irelia, and Lux, who all had crowd control of their own, Warwick would constantly proc the bonus damage of the Static Shiv, ending up in a frenzy where even a 1-star Warwick could absolutely dominate the enemy team.
No.
Within hours, this comp became noticed by all players on all servers, and every single lobby became crammed with every single player trying to find a Warwick of their own. In some lobbies, the top 4 was made up entirely of Warwick players, with every other composition ending up in the bot 4. Even today, Warweek is considered one of the most broken patches of all time. Obviously, the community decided as the most broken comp, but even Mortdog himself lists it in the top 5 mistakes made by developers of TFT.
Top 5 biggest mistakes in TFT history in no particular order. The Dragon Trait, 9/11 Karthus, Shadow Items, Patch 10.J4, and Warweek.
With just a single unit stabilizing you into the endgame, players struggled to find other compositions that could match the power of Divine Hunter Warwick.
Whatever, like, look at this. This is not even close.
However, there was one player on the North American ladder who was climbing more consistently than anybody else. And the most impressive part, he was doing it without playing Warwick. Mismatched Socks is a professional TFT player who has represented North America on the world stage twice. In set 4, he was known by many as the best individual player in North America.
I would definitely say Socks because I think he's probably the best player right now on the patch.
Socks was by far, beyond the shadow of a doubt, both statistically and known by the players themselves, as the best player in set 4. And on this patch in particular, people really started to notice that Sox was just playing a different game entirely.
The reason why I was able to climb so much, I think comes down to two major factors. Back in the days, a lot of fundamentals were not really a thing. I'm talking about things like positioning. People didn't really move their units. I'm talking about people like transitioning. People were very bad at transitioning back then, especially with Chosen being so difficult. I would say the second reason I was able to climb so much was because I think other people were like really tunneled on Warwick. I was able to play a few more comps that were slightly worse than Warwick, but still were able to like do well, because in the event that 7 out of 8 people are playing Warwick, 5 or 6 of them are bound to miss. So by playing well, preserving HP, playing my strongest board, I was able to top 3 and top 4 consistently because of taking advantage of all the low rollers.
Just like the good things, all bad things must have an end as well. Within a week, the game was B-patched, Static Shiv's damage was nerfed, and Warweek officially came to an end. In the big picture, you could argue that there have been other compositions that have been more game warping than something like Warwick. The two that come to mind are patch 10.J4 in set 3.5, where a 1-star 1-cost was the best unit in the game, or the Draven Legend patch in set 9, where everybody was getting additional resources, and because of that, every single player is ending the game with multiple 3-star 4 costs. But I think the reason that Warwick stands out to players is because of how flashy and disruptive it was. To hear the Wolf howl stun your team and then burst them down near instantly with 3 static shivs was so far from the standard TFT gameplay that it was just impossible to ignore. It is a great example of perception becoming reality. Yes, it was broken, and it was meta warping, and it over-centralized the game around a single condition. But Sox's experience during Warweek raises a few questions. If Sox was able to climb so consistently during the height of Warwick, would others have been able to do the same? And on a macro level, does this maybe suggest that TFT players have knee-jerk reactions about patches and metas and composition strength? This is something that's been seen in many quote-unquote broken patches in TFT's lifespan. Something is discovered, it is abused until it's popular, and then it is either patched out or people learn to play around it. A great example that comes to mind for me personally is what many people thought of as the Yuumi patch in set 8.
Yeah, maybe it is Alistair. I don't know. What the? Are you effing kidding me?
A Yuumi reroll composition was discovered right before Riot went on Christmas break. Many players immediately came to the conclusion that this composition would ruin the game until Riot came back from their 3-week break. Ironically, this patch ended up being a relatively healthy patch. Players discovered other 2 and 3 cost reroll compositions that could rival the mid-game strength of the Yuumi composition. And while Yuumi was strong, the inability to B or C patch the comp required players to come up with optimizations that brought other compositions up to its level. Maybe this is a hot take, but in my personal opinion, having an overpowered Yuumi composition was actually better for the meta, as players couldn't just contest each other every single game to play the broken reroll comp. Now, I'm not making the argument that Warwick shouldn't have been nerfed, but I do think that this extreme example sheds some light on a very real problem that TFT players grapple with. When even the majority of the high elo community was trying to hard force Warwick, why could the rank 1 player play everything else and still climb? And the truth is simple, the fundamentals of TFT will always exist in the game even when something is broken. Because even if 2 players hit the jackpot hard forcing something broken in the meta, there are still 2 other spots in the top 4 left to be claimed. I think many would consider set 4 Sox to have some of the best fundamentals and game knowledge relative to the players of his time in TFT history. And while the compositions and endgame boards he landed on may lose to the highest cap in the game, he could navigate the game in a way that preserved HP, won crucial fights, and wasted fewer resources. And in a game of resource management, there is not much else you could ask for. When Warwick cried his final howl and the nerf hammer came down, it brought many players LP down with it.
Don't hurt him!
But as I'm sure you know now, Sox wasn't one of those players. If there's a moral to this story, it's that TFT can't be solved in a vacuum. Every patch has a so-called best comp, but the best players in TFT don't just copy, they adapt. Because in TFT, your ability to manage resources and recognize opportunity will always outlast the latest broken comp. The other moral of the story is, if something is as broken as Warwick, you should play it before they patch it.